have a fucking bachelor's degree.
$7 for 10 slices of cheese?
I've had the ground beef. Why is it $30?
$16.99 for a half a gallon of goat milk.
I'm sorry, I can't go into work today. I don't have gas. Nope, I have no money to buy gas.
I got paid today, so let's do a paycheck and mental breakdown because I have no fucking money left.
Something is snapping across America, and it no longer sounds like normal frustration. It sounds like workers breaking down after payday, graduates getting rejected from basic jobs, parents putting groceries back, renters staring at impossible balances, and people asking why survival now costs so much before life even begins. A paycheck arrives, then rent takes it, gas takes it, insurance takes it, taxes take it, food takes it, debt takes whatever remains. The country still tells people to work harder and stay calm, but millions have already done the math, and the math is turning into anger fast. For decades, America sold people a simple bargain. Go to school, get the credential, find the job, pay your bills, stay responsible, keep showing up. One day, the pressure will turn into stability. That bargain is now falling apart in public. A college degree used to feel like protection, not wealth, not luxury, just protection from the absolute bottom. But when someone with a bachelor's degree gets rejected from a cashier job at Target, the old promise starts to look like a scam with student loan paperwork attached. The problem is not one rejection email. The problem is what that rejection represents. The bottom is no longer easy to reach. Even the starter job has become competitive. Entry-level jobs ask for experience. Low-wage jobs reject applicants with degrees. White-collar jobs disappear behind automated systems, frozen budgets, and fake listings that stay online for months. In April 2026, the official unemployment rate was only 4.3%, and employers added 115,000 jobs, which sounds stable from a distance. Yet the same report counted 7.4 million unemployed people, and millions more are underemployed, burned out, or stuck applying into silence. That gap is where the anger begins. On paper, the labor market still functions. In real life, people are sending out applications like distress signals. Some are applying for jobs far below their education level. Others are competing with hundreds of applicants for roles that barely cover rent. A degree, once treated like a key, now feels more like a receipt for a promise nobody wants to honor. So the first crack in the system is not the grocery store. It is not the gas pump. It starts earlier than that. It starts when people realize work itself is no longer guaranteed. Then, for the people who do get paid, the second shock is waiting under fluorescent lights. The grocery store has become one of the most brutal places in America because it strips away every excuse. Politicians can debate inflation. Economists can explain categories. Corporations can blame supply chains. None of that matters when a shopper sees $7 cheese, $6 chips, $9 soda, $20 instant coffee, $30 ground beef, or a meat package that makes dinner feel like a financial mistake. Food at home rose 2.9% over the 12 months ending in April 2026, according to the Consumer Price Index. Fruits and vegetables rose 6.1%, and non-alcoholic beverages rose 5.1%. Those numbers sound small compared with the emotional reaction because people are not comparing 1 month to 1 month. They are comparing today's prices to the life they remember. A shopper does not experience inflation as a percentage. They experience it as hesitation. A hand reaches for the item, stops, checks the tag, and puts it back. A parent tells a child to choose a drink, then changes the answer after seeing the price. A normal pasta night becomes a calculation because meat no longer feels casual. A snack aisle starts looking like a luxury aisle. The cart gets lighter, but the receipt still gets heavier. That is why people do not feel relieved when inflation slows. Slower price increases do not erase the higher price. If cereal doubled, then rises more slowly, the household still lives inside the doubled reality. The wound becomes the new baseline. The pain gets normalized, and the system expects applause because it is hurting people at a slightly slower speed. Nothing about that feels like recovery. Groceries hit so hard because nobody can opt out of eating. A family can cancel a subscription. They can postpone a trip. They can stop going out. Food is different. Every week, the household has to return to the same shelves and face the same question. What can we afford to put in the cart without destroying the rest of the month? That question is spreading beyond poor households. Workers with full-time jobs are feeling it. Parents with 2 incomes are feeling it. People who once bought without thinking are now comparing ounces, brands, discounts, and expiration dates like every aisle is an exam. The grocery store is where the speeches die. Once food becomes stressful, everything else feels more fragile. The next pressure point is transportation, because in much of America, driving is not optional. It is the cost of being employable. Gas is not just gas. It is the price of reaching the paycheck. A worker needs income to pay rent. The income requires a job. The job requires a car. The car requires gas, insurance, repairs, registration, and sometimes a monthly payment. Each part depends on the next, and none of it pauses because money gets tight. That loop is why people sound so furious at the pump. They are not only paying for fuel, they are paying the entrance fee to keep participating in the economy. Miss enough shifts because the car fails and the job is at risk. Miss the job and rent is at risk. Miss rent and housing is at risk. One weak link can threaten the entire structure. The Consumer Price Index showed shelter rising 0.6% in April 2026, while rent and owners' equivalent rent both rose 0.5% that month. Small monthly increases may look manageable in a report, but inside a paycheck that is already stretched, even a small increase can feel like another hand reaching into the account. Transportation turns poverty into a trap because the worker has to spend money to earn money. That is the part people are beginning to question out loud. Why does getting to work cost so much? Why does staying housed cost so much? Why does earning money require so many payments before the money can even solve anything? The American commute used to represent movement. Now for millions, it feels like a treadmill with a gas tank. From the gas pump, the pressure moves straight into rent, the bill that decides whether the rest of the month has any room to breathe. Housing is where the economy becomes unforgiving. A national average rent of $1,930 was recorded by Zillow at the end of April 2026. That number does not include the emotional cost of seeing it land inside a real budget. A worker making $20 an hour earns about $3,466 a month before taxes if they work full-time. Once taxes, insurance, transportation, food, utilities, and debt enter the picture, a rent bill near $1,900 does not feel like a housing expense. It feels like a monthly verdict. Rent is dangerous because it is rigid. Food can be reduced, driving can be limited, entertainment can disappear entirely. Rent arrives as a fixed demand with a deadline. The portal does not care that groceries jumped. The landlord does not care that gas rose. The lease does not adjust because health insurance renewed at a higher price. Housing costs sit at the front of the line and take the first major cut. That is how people can earn more and still feel poorer. A worker who made $14.50 an hour in 2020 and now makes around $25 may look like a success story from far away. The wage increased, the paycheck grew, the person did what they were supposed to do. Yet if rent jumped from $950 to nearly $1,700, groceries climbed, gas stayed expensive, insurance rose, and healthcare kept draining money, the raise did not create progress. It became a survival adjustment. Real average hourly earnings fell 0.2% from April 2025 to April 2026, which means inflation still ate into wage gains over that period. That is why the phrase "wages are up" can feel insulting. A bigger paycheck does not feel bigger when every bill got there first. People did not imagine the pressure. They felt the finish line move. After rent, food, and transportation, another layer waits quietly in the background. The systems Americans pay for before they even know whether they will need them. Insurance has become one of the most exhausting bills in the country. Health insurance, car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, deductibles, premiums, co-pays, claim disputes, policy changes, renewal notices. The entire structure is sold as protection, but for many households, protection now feels like another form of exposure. People pay every month and still fear what happens when something goes wrong. A premium does not mean a medical bill will be affordable. A deductible can still delay care. A car insurance policy can still rise after one incident. A homeowner can pay for years and still fight for coverage after damage. The emotional problem is not just the price, it is the lack of trust. Workers look at the money leaving their checks and accounts, then wonder why the systems funded by that money still feel so hard to use. Taxes come out first, insurance follows, fees stack up. At the end, the household is told to be thankful for what remains. Tax season intensifies the anger because it turns confusion into a ritual. People receive forms, enter numbers, fear mistakes, pay software, sometimes pay preparers, and try to calculate what the government often already has in its records. The process feels absurd to workers who are already tired. Money was withheld all year. Now the worker must prove the numbers correctly or risk penalties. That kind of friction matters. A society can ask people to contribute. What it cannot do forever is ask them to contribute while making the exchange feel confusing, expensive, and unrewarding. Broken roads, overwhelmed services, unaffordable health care, and rising local fees make people ask a question that sounds simple but carries real anger. Where is the money going? Once that question spreads, the problem becomes bigger than one paycheck. It becomes a trust crisis. Debt fills the space where trust used to be. When wages cannot carry the month, credit cards do. When rent arrives before payday, debt steps in. When a car breaks, debt steps in. When a pet gets sick, a medical bill hits, or groceries outrun the account, another balance appears. Consumer credit increased at a 3.2% annual rate in the first quarter of 2026, with revolving credit rising at a 3.8% annual rate, according to the Federal Reserve. In plain language, the country is still leaning on borrowed money to keep ordinary life moving. Debt used to be framed as a tool for building a house, a degree, a business, a major purchase. Now, for many people, debt is a patch over income that no longer reaches far enough. Credit cards buy groceries. Payment plans cover basic goods. Family transfers fill holes. Minimum payments become monthly survival fees. Nothing about that feels like financial freedom. It feels like renting time. The New York Fed reported total household debt at $18.8 trillion in the first quarter of 2026, with 4.8% of outstanding debt in some stage of delinquency. Behind that giant number are households trying to stay current just long enough to avoid a larger collapse. Debt changes the emotional atmosphere of a home. Every new paycheck arrives with old obligations already waiting. The money is not fresh. It is pre-claimed. Credit card minimums, rent debt, car payments, student loans, medical balances, and family obligations line up before the worker gets to think about anything that feels like life. The result is a strange kind of exhaustion. People are working, paying, borrowing, catching up, falling behind, and doing it again. No dramatic failure is required. The routine itself becomes draining. That is why paycheck-to-paycheck living should not be dismissed as normal middle-class stress. A household with no cushion is not stable. It may look stable from the outside because the bills are technically getting paid. Underneath, one emergency can break everything. The Federal Reserve's 2025 Household Well-Being Report found that 63% of adults said they could cover a $400 emergency expense using cash or its equivalent, meaning 37% could not do so that way. Prices also remain the most common financial concern, with 53% of adults calling them a major concern. A $400 emergency should not be enough to terrify a working household. Yet for millions, it is. A tire blows. A child needs something unexpected. A medical bill arrives. A shift gets cut. A utility bill spikes. The refrigerator fails. Suddenly, the budget is no longer tight. It is broken. The country calls that financial fragility. People living inside it call it Tuesday. Housing turns that fragility into fear because rent does not offer much room for error. Once a payment is late, the rules can become harsher. Grace periods end. Fees appear. Partial payments may be blocked. Online portals can restrict options. The balance grows while the tenant tries to catch up. This part of the economy is especially brutal because falling behind often makes recovery more expensive. Someone who is short on rent may be required to pay the full balance, plus late fees, in a specific form by a deadline that does not match their next paycheck. Legal pressure can begin before the household has fully recovered. If eviction enters the record, the damage can follow the person into future applications. Falling behind on rent is not only about owing money. It can become a mark against a person's ability to live indoors. That is why unemployment feels so terrifying in this environment. Losing work does not simply reduce income. It threatens the entire chain: rent, car, insurance, food, credit, dignity, and future housing. The job search becomes a psychological waiting room. People stop making plans because plans cost money. They avoid friends because social life costs money. They delay normal purchases, skip small comforts, and start measuring life in survival windows. The person is still alive, still trying, still applying, but their real life feels suspended until money returns. A broke economy does not only empty bank accounts, it shrinks identity. Someone who once hesitated over festival tickets now hesitates over coffee. Someone who once planned for the future now plans around the next bill. The world becomes smaller, not because ambition disappeared, but because every ordinary action has been converted into a cost. That is the deeper reason Americans sound different now. They are not only upset about prices, they are grieving the loss of normal life. Normal used to mean that working full-time could support basic survival. Normal meant groceries did not require strategy. Normal meant a raise created breathing room. Normal meant rent was heavy, but not suffocating. Normal meant debt was something to manage, not something required to eat. Today, normal has been repriced. Small purchases feel suspicious. A refill bottle costs almost as much as the original. A basic skincare product feels like a luxury decision. A child's juice becomes too expensive. A snack becomes unreasonable. A simple dinner becomes a receipt worth discussing. These moments may sound small compared with rent or debt, but they matter because they show how far the pressure has spread. When every tiny purchase feels like a financial decision, life starts to feel audited. That is not how people are supposed to live. There is a reason this anger is coming out through short videos, rants, grocery clips, gas station breakdowns, and paycheck reviews. People are documenting the collapse of their own patience. They are showing the receipts because the official language does not match what their lives feel like. From above, the economy still looks functional. Stores are open. Roads are full. Airports move crowds. Restaurants still have lines. Stock prices still change. Companies still report profits. Government reports still arrive with careful wording. At street level, the same economy feels like a machine that charges people for every inch of movement. That difference between official stability and lived instability is where trust dies. If leaders say the economy is strong while workers cannot survive on work, workers stop trusting the language. If companies talk about opportunity while applicants are ghosted, applicants stop believing the listings. If inflation is described as cooling while grocery bills remain painful, shoppers stop listening to the explanation. The receipt becomes more believable than the speech. America is entering a dangerous emotional phase because people are not simply frustrated. They are comparing notes. They are realizing their private struggle is part of a wider pattern. The graduate rejected from a basic job, the parent shocked by groceries, the renter facing a massive increase, the worker left with almost nothing after payday, and the unemployed person watching life shrink are all describing different doors into the same room. The room is full of pressure. No single bill explains the crash out. The pile does. Job uncertainty, rent, food, gas, insurance, taxes, debt, medical costs, application silence, emergency expenses, fees, late penalties, moving costs, credit damage. Every category adds weight, and the weight no longer feels temporary. Older advice starts failing in that environment. Cook at home? Groceries are expensive. Move somewhere cheaper? Moving requires money, deposits, credit approval, time, and a job. Get a better job? Better jobs often demand experience, referrals, degrees, tests, interviews, and luck. Save more? The paycheck is already assigned before it arrives. Work overtime? Overtime buys groceries, not freedom. None of this means discipline is useless. Budgeting still matters. Skill building still matters. Better decisions still matter. But advice becomes insulting when it ignores the size of the gap. A budget cannot turn a dead paycheck into a living one. The real breaking point arrives when people no longer believe sacrifice leads anywhere. That belief held the system together for generations. Work more now so life gets easier later. Take debt now so income improves later. Rent now so ownership becomes possible later. Skip pleasure now so stability arrives later. What if later keeps moving away? The worker gets a raise, but rent rises faster. The graduate gets a degree, but the job market rejects them anyway. The family pays insurance, but still fears medical bills. The renter pays on time, then gets hit with a renewal increase. The credit card helps for 1 month, then becomes next month's burden. Sacrifice without progress becomes resentment. That resentment is now visible. Americans are not crashing out because they suddenly became weak. They are reacting to a system that keeps demanding responsibility while raising the price of being responsible. Staying housed costs more. Staying employed costs more. Staying healthy costs more. Staying insured costs more. Staying current on debt costs more. Even calm now has a cost. The unsettling part is that the country still expects people to perform normalcy. Smile at work, stay professional in interviews, be polite to landlords, pay bills on time, keep spending, remain optimistic, avoid complaining too loudly, accept explanations that do not match daily life. A society can only demand that performance for so long before the mask slips. The mask is slipping now. People are saying the quiet parts loudly. They are admitting they cannot afford gas. They are showing empty bank accounts after payday. They are filming grocery prices because disbelief has become part of the experience. They are questioning rent, taxes, insurance, jobs, and the entire structure of survival. That does not mean every claim online is perfect. Not every price reflects the national average. Not every story represents every household. Some people are doing fine. Some regions are stronger than others. Some workers are still moving up, but a country does not need everyone to collapse before it has a serious problem. Millions feeling cornered is enough. The warning is not that America has no jobs. The warning is that jobs are losing their ability to calm people down. Work used to be the answer that ended the argument. Now someone can work full-time, pick up overtime, cut expenses, use credit carefully, and still feel one bill away from chaos. Once work stops feeling protective, the entire social contract changes. People withdraw, they lose trust. They stop believing official optimism, they stop blaming only themselves. Anger moves from private shame into public recognition. That recognition is the real story behind the crash out. Americans are looking at the economy and realizing the problem is not one bad habit, one bad month, or one unlucky bill. It is a structure where every basic need has become a pressure point. Food pressures the family, rent pressures the paycheck, insurance pressures the account, taxes pressure the take-home pay, debt pressures the future. The job market pressures the person before any of those bills can even be paid. Together, they create a life where survival feels like a subscription that keeps raising the price. That is why the anger sounds so raw. People did what they were told. They got educated, they applied, they worked, they budgeted, they delayed gratification. They paid into systems. They believed that effort would eventually buy breathing room. For too many, breathing room never came. The country can keep calling this normal. It can keep smoothing the numbers, softening the language, and telling people to be patient. Yet patience depends on belief, and belief depends on evidence. Right now, the evidence is sitting in bank apps, rent portals, grocery receipts, insurance renewals, tax forms, credit card statements, and unanswered job applications. Americans are not confused. They are reading the economy line by line. The closing warning is simple. A nation built on work cannot ignore what happens when workers stop believing work will protect them. Expensive groceries alone will not break a country. High rent alone will not break a country. Debt alone will not break a country. But when all of it hits at once and people are still told to smile through it, something deeper begins to crack. That crack is already audible. The math says the paycheck is too weak, the bills are too strong, the safety net is too thin, and the future costs more than millions can afford. That is not a mood. That is a warning.